Ian Pryor is a former trial attorney and former principal deputy director of public affairs at the Justice Department. His first interview since leaving, first TV interview. Great to see you today. Can we first talk about this advantage quotient that the defense is talking about? Is it true that the longer that it takes, it benefits the defendant?
Well, look, I think there are two sides to the coin here. First of all, we're not talking about a general murder trial, right, where you have a weapon and you have an eyewitness, perhaps, right? This is a very complex fraud trial involving, I believe, 18 counts. So it's not necessarily unusual for a jury to deliberate for a long period of time. But there are two things that I look at that I think do make it look like Manafort may have some hope here. First, the jury came back with a question about what does reasonable doubt mean? Now, if you're a defense attorney, anytime somebody comes back and asks about the burden of proof, that's a good sign. That means that they are thinking about whether there is enough evidence there. The second part, and it's a small thing, but the fact is that they had this on a Friday. Juries do not like to come back over the weekend. If they can wrap a case up with a quick verdict on a Friday and not come back on a Monday, they will. You get into the weekend, they're thinking about reasonable doubt. Maybe some reasonable doubt does creep in. I mean, ultimately, it's tough to know what a jury is thinking at any point in time.
Sure.
But I do see some sliver of hope there for him.
All right. So if Manafort, though, is found guilty and you move forward, what could the president do? Can he pardon anyone whom he wants?
Absolutely. And there's a lot of misconception out there about the pardon power. The president has pardoned several people without going through the Department of Justice. Now, the president has the pardon power through the U.S. Constitution. In the late 1890s, that was delegated to the Office of the Pardon Attorney in the Department of Justice. Now, that assists the president in the hundreds or even thousands of applications that come in, but it doesn't limit what the president can do. The president can pardon anyone. Bill Clinton pardoned 39 people without going to the Justice Department, including his brother and his Whitewater associates.
Well, and of course, the reason that I ask about this, too, is because the president was giving his support as he was boarding a flight last week before the weekend, saying, you know, he's basically a good guy. He wasn't with the campaign for all that long, Paul Manafort, but he's basically a good guy. Let's move on to someone else who's in the constellation of the president now, and that's his former attorney, Michael Cohen. Feds now reportedly investigating Michael Cohen for alleged bank fraud and campaign finance violations, say that they may even be ready to charge. What does that mean for the president?
Well, I think where this is really problematic is it's going into the midterm elections in the fall. So you're going to have two associates of the president potentially on trial, or potentially indicted and on trial. I would be cautious about reports, though. I've seen several reports over the past year and a half about what Mueller is looking into, who's going to get indicted next, and they haven't come to fruition for the most part. I do think that, is this problematic? Sure. Is it unprecedented? No. And when you have a special counsel or an independent counsel, as you had out there in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, these things happen. You set someone out there to look for facts, they find them, and people end up getting indicted.
Yeah, and as the president says, he calls it sad, people who've been near him, and that's again why I brought up the pardon. I know I mentioned that this is your first interview since leaving the DOJ, and real quickly, how aware were you of the alleged conflict of interest or improprieties with Bruce Orr? You know, he's being looked at too at the DOJ for possible conflicts of interest. His wife worked for the same company that put together the anti-Trump dossier.
Right, sure. So I arrived at the Department of Justice as a political appointee in March of 2017. That stuff had already happened. Obviously, I've seen the reports that have come out since then. It's important to know, though, two things. One, there's the current Inspector General investigation into what happened with the dossier and how that all went down. Two, it is very difficult to just fire somebody that is not a political appointee in the government. So, I think you saw with Peter Strzok, I think you saw with Jim McCabe, or different than with Comey, who's a political appointee or an appointee of the president. So you have to let the process play out. We'll see what the Inspector General finds, and then I think the Department of Justice will make a decision based on that report.
Ian Pryor, we will have you back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The president.